Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. In the house with me tonight is Robbie Rip Rains, my brother from South Crackalacky. Doc won't be with us for probably the next week and a half. He's having to teach some classes, and then he's spending some time with family down in is it Georgia or Mississippi?
Mississippi, I think.
Yeah, so Doc spent a little time with family, but he'll be back in a week or so. Steve is with family tonight and may or may not pop in late. But whether if he can't make it, then I hope he has a lot of fun with his family. So, so you just got to put up with me and Robbie tonight. Robbie, how the hell are you, brother?
Doing good. Other than earlier today.
Well, yeah, I know you're in mourning after that football game. I don't know if we could call it a game, more of a beating.
No, it was definitely not a game. It was, it is what it is. Nothing but move forward now.
True. I mean, it was right up there with the pasting that Texas was giving Colorado State.
Yeah. During college football season, y'all gonna get to see the best and the worst of me. But I'm gonna try to keep it positive for the show tonight.
Well, one of the things we noticed when I worked in the jail here in the county, is we used to refer to Sundays during football season as domestic Sundays because if the Chiefs lost, domestic violence calls went up.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. People take football
we actually
seriously.
kept record of it. Domestic violence calls went way up when the Chiefs lost. I was like, dang, I can't imagine taking football that seriously.
Some people take it really serious.
Some do. That is a fact. I was driving through Denver, Colorado one time back in the 80s, and there was a guy that had the Denver Broncos logo in. He didn't have it painted in, he had it done in the shingles on his house with different colored shingles. And the house was orange and blue.
Yeah, that's a fan right there.
Yeah, that's a diehard fan.
Of course, I can't say nothing. I got a Clemson Paw tattooed on my leg, so I mean,
well,
that's about as extreme as you can go.
But you also have logo from one of my books on so I can't complain about that.
What can I say? I go all in.
Mrs. Moon says she's seen that house. It's hard to miss. I mean, it does stand out quite a bit.
Rodney, I can't help it. I'm a true fan. I got that tattoo when we got shellacked in the Orange Bowl by West Virginia, 70 to whatever it was. I got it after that game, so.
No, that's how you know you're a diehard fan. I would never wanted to be
or an idiot. One or the other.
Well, it's a fine line.
Very fine.
But I never wanted to be that guy that suddenly, after somebody won the Super Bowl, showed up the next day wearing their jersey. I'm not that kind of guy. Little Patty says, "Go Chiefs." I think we'll probably see some good stuff out of the Chiefs this year. I'm personally not a Chiefs fan, but I think Mahomes is going to put in another good season.
Well, he's trying to close that distance gap between him and Brady. Because right now he's the only one that's even remotely got a chance to be as good as Brady.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, folks, thanks for bearing with us as we talk sports a minute there. I had to bring that up because Robbie had a bad day, and we're hoping we can cheer him up and have a little bit better time.
Well, and then Michelle had to go put what she. Thanks, Michelle. I really appreciate that. That just made me feel so much better.
Oh well. The topic tonight when I was talking about not just Jules Verne, but we're actually going to be talking about him and H.G. Wells both, but primarily Jules Verne. This is all Robbie's brainstorm because he drew connections where I really hadn't even noticed before, even though I've read most of these books. It just didn't click. But when we start talking about some of what these guys were writing, we're talking some of these guys were writing stuff about things that hadn't even happened for more than 100 years. Um, like for example, Around the World in 80 Days. That at that time, that was an impossible dream. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it, of course, they succeeded in the book, but we're talking about circumnavigating the Earth, and we can do it in a matter of hours now if you've got a fast enough jet. But back then, going all the way around the Earth was unheard of. So just absolutely cutting edge stuff. But what really kicked it off, I'm going to let Robbie start us out on, was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah, and for those of you who are long time followers of the show, you've probably heard me say this many times. There, the submarine that Verne describes in 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea was pretty much what we consider a nuclear class submarine now. I mean, yes, there were differences and things were called different things.
And it was kind of steampunk level technology,
Yeah,
but that's what they had.
but basically that was the equivalent. But even if you take the nuclear power out of it and say that it was just a diesel class, that's still far and above.
Well, submarines we were talking. He wrote this
Yeah.
story in an age of wooden ships.
So, but like I say, so even if you're going to say it was comparable to I guess was that the Seawolf class, or no, was Nimitz class? No, that's
No,
nuclear
Nimitz was an
too.
aircraft carrier. I think you're thinking of the
Nimitz
Los
class.
Angeles Los Angeles
Class, yes. But even if it was any of the, if it was, it's so far ahead of anything that was out there. And of course, I've had this conversation with people, and they're like, "Well, people that invented submarines just read what he wrote, and that's what they based it off of." Well, maybe, but still, how did he
come up with an idea and
yeah,
know it would work?
Yeah, because I mean, we talked about this a little bit on the show Wednesday night. I think that certain people are put in certain times for certain reasons.
Well, sometimes the creative mind of a writer, and I'm not tooting my own horn here by any means. I'm talking about some of these great writers of throughout time. Sometimes the creative minds of these writers taps into something, and I don't even know where it comes from. Um, you know, like with Tolkien. Tolkien created an entire world. Not just wrote stories in it. He created a history of this world. He created languages for this world. I mean, if you look into the true scope of Tolkien's writing, it's incredible what he came up with.
Yeah, well, and to a lesser degree though, Robert Howard with the Conan world, he did sort of the same thing. Because I've got the unabridged version that goes back and goes through all his works before the actual Conan book started, and goes back to um, Solomon Kane and Cull and all those. So where he was actually fleshing the world out, and there's so much that goes in, and it's like I've said about you. I mean, how you interconnect all these series and all these things. There's a creative, and I don't hesitate to use the term genius there, because you have to have a different type of intellect and to be able to keep all that stuff together, number one, and make it make sense to not just you, but to everybody who reads it, to where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can totally understand that. So for him to be able to come up with something like a submarine that is, I mean, because that's what it was. They may have called it something. They may not have called it a submarine, but it was. That's what it was.
Right.
It's mind blowing to think of that technology being written down, hundreds of years before it was ever actually put into play.
Born to Run says they had those turtle submarines in the Civil War. I believe, if I remember my history correctly, they had one, the Hunley, and it wasn't anything remotely like a modern submarine. It was incredibly hot inside. They had just what air they had on board, and it was ran by 6 men running a crank.
Yep, crank the screw in the back of it.
And the one someone mentioned Gary Lowe said they had a type of sub during the American Civil War, during the American Revolution. Yeah, I've read a book about that. It was actually more like, I don't know, a ballasted barrel. It could only go just a short distance below the water with a snorkel, and they moved it by cranking a propeller on the end of a dowel. So yeah, technically they did have one, and all they could really do with it was like get up next to enemy ships and leave explosives or drill holes in the hull. So yes, well, technically it was a submersible, and the ideas for submersible vehicles probably wasn't new, but the thought of something on the scale of the Nautilus was leagues beyond their technology at the time.
Yeah,
20,000
20,
to be precise.
I was just about to say it. 20,000 leagues ahead of it.
And the thought of going to that deep in the ocean, also something completely beyond their, because the only thing they'd have done, even the Hunley only went down a few feet.
Yeah, and even the first, even though they weren't true submarines, the Monitor and the Merrimack, those were more shallow water
They really
battleships.
weren't subs. They were
Yeah.
they were just low draft ironclad battleships.
But a lot of people say those because they did run somewhere below or somewhat below the water
Well,
line.
the deck was almost at the water line.
Yeah,
That was made what made them so much harder to damage is because they sat so low in the water.
Yeah.
But they weren't submersibles. They had to have air and they had to stay on the surface.
yeah. So even if you throw those in there, you throw the Hunley in there, you all those, they were nowhere near what Verne was writing about the Nautilus doing. It's just
there's a good comparison for you. The Naughty Worms Farm says that the Los Angeles class sub meets steampunk is the best description for the Nautilus. You ain't wrong.
Yep.
And Dorothy Wade says, well, how much is a league? I don't know.
I knew that at one point, but I can't remember what it.
Okay.
Right.
In English-speaking countries, the league is usually 3 statute miles, 4.828 kilometers. On land, 3 nautical miles is 5.556 kilometers. So about 5 miles.
So long way.
No, 3 miles. 3 miles.
Still a long way.
5.556 kilometers is about 3 miles. So 20,000 leagues under the sea, that's what, 60,000 miles?
Long way.
Many Christmas. That's way deeper than I thought.
So there again, he's writing about. There was no. How do you even fathom? Pardon the pun. Going that deep at that point in time, because we wouldn't even think about something like that. Hardly.
We had no idea what the oceans were. We had even no way to know. I mean, our best guess at that time of the technology of Jules Verne, where they would drop ropes with a weight on, and had knots at certain lengths, and they would start feeding that out until the rope stopped pulling, and they would guess by the number of knots they could estimate the depth. But if you got over the Marianas Trench, Jesus, that ship probably couldn't carry enough rope to reach the bottom of it.
No. But, and it didn't stop with 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea with Jules Verne. I mean, just about every major book that he wrote that was published. I mean, we were talking before the show started, there's a lot of stuff that he wrote that neither one of us recognized. I don't know if that stuff was even published or not, or if it was probably not ever like popularized like the others were. But Journey to the Center of the Earth, if you read the descriptions of these biospheres, I guess is the best term, or ecosystems or whatever,
turns out he was right on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, because there was an under I don't want to say Chile. It wasn't Chile. What country was it they found some of these things under that were just almost identical to what he described.
I think it was under the Andes in Chile.
Andes. Yeah, okay, maybe that's why I was thinking Chile then. But
I know it was South America somewhere,
the
but I think it was
bioluminescence.
under the Andes.
Really,
They've also discovered some of that in some of the caves in Mexico, and that cave in, what was it, Vietnam, that has its entire own ecosystem.
yeah. I mean, really, the only thing that they haven't come out and said that they found in there that Verne wrote about was the big lizards or dinosaurs or whatever you want to call them.
And if we're right about there being pocket ecospheres, that might even still be down there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, like I said, certain people are put in certain time periods for certain reasons, I think. And he was one of those. Because even if it is that just people just read what he wrote and used that as a stepping stone to build this stuff, would we have had that stuff if he hadn't written about it?
Kirst says, at that point, they would be below the deepest locations we know of. So what, inner earth deep waters? Well, the Bible talks about the waters of the deep.
The fountains of the deep breaking open.
Deep. And they've already postulated, this is modern science, they've already postulated there might be entire oceans of water beneath our oceans.
Yep.
Hell, if you look at it just here in the United States, you could search this, or I could try to bring up a map. But if you look up the Ogallala Aquifer, it's a giant underground fresh lake that goes under multiple states. Let me see if I can find a map of the Ogallala Aquifer.
Yeah, Dorothy, we're getting ready to speak on that book too.
The Ogallala Aquifer is approximately 174,000 square miles.
That's a big lake.
It covers parts of Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming. That's a big lake. Yeah, it has portions. It covers most of Nebraska, just a little bit into South Dakota, quite a bit into Wyoming, some into Colorado, a bunch in Kansas, the entire Oklahoma Panhandle, and almost all of Texas's Panhandle, and part of eastern New Mexico. So this is a massive underground lake, and that's fresh water. It's where most of that area gets its water from. When I lived down in New Mexico, that's when I first heard about the Ogallala Aquifer, and it's not the only one. There are other deep aquifers, but that one's one of the biggest.
Well, there was wasn't there a frontier town called Ogallala that was somewhere around Oklahoma?
I think so, but Ogallala they get that name from the Ogallala Sioux.
Okay, I just wondered if it had anything to do with that.
No, it's named after the Ogallala Sioux.
Yeah, because that's right, because that's the same tribe in Lonesome Dove.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they were going, and that's the tribe that killed him. At what's her name, Ellie?
Mm-hmm. Dr. 45120 Sharp, at the pressures of being under Earth's crust, water would probably be in a metallic form. Yeah, we have no idea what kind of pressure would be at that kind of depth. That's why in the movie they made for Journey to the Center of the Earth, they referred to the metals that they used as unobtainium.
Yeah, they
used that a pretty good movie.
They use that in quite a few movies. They used it in Avatar too. That's what they named the metal that they were mining from the planet, unobtainium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people are mentioning the Ogallala, Nebraska is almost to Wyoming on 180. But the Ogallala Aquifer is massive, 174,000 square miles of underground lake. And I don't even know if they know how deep it is. Chris Burkhart says, if there's water, there's life. You ain't wrong.
That's true.
We've discovered there's life even at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, where we didn't think there was. And one of the weirder things they captured on camera at the bottom of the Marianas Trench was the gill slits of a shark that they estimated the speed and time it took to cross by that camera, and that shark had to be close to 80 feet long. But again, going right back to Journey to the Center of the Earth, he was right about a lot of this stuff. And this is, as far as we know, he wasn't a speleologist. He didn't go digging into these caves. He what do you call it? A swag, scientific wild
Yep.
ass guess.
Scientific wild ass guess.
He sat down to write that book, and the crazy thing is the things he described we're finding now. And I don't, I just, I don't, as a writer myself, I can't, I just don't, my brain does not click with that. Like, how did he know? I mean, I've made some couple of scientific wild ass guesses and come close to some stuff, but that's just stuff that I looked at and went, well, they say we can do this, and I know we can do this, so I bet we can do this. That was just me kind of taking a leap. It wasn't going, I bet at 3 miles beneath the surface there's an entire biosphere that lives on photoluminescence.
Yeah,
No.
because where's he getting the speculative information like you're getting? It's not, that information was not available at that time when he was writing that. You have the ability to go, number one, based on the fact that you were in the military and you still have plenty of connections that you can talk with people. You can get on the Googles and look at things, and you can make your
I hate you for that, by the way. I say the Googles all the time now.
You're welcome. But he didn't have that same option to be able to. I'm not gonna say it, but he didn't have that option. So, like you said, how did he just? He's either a genius or he knew something.
Or maybe like Josh Jones was saying the other night, that the human brain is actually a form of quantum entanglement. Maybe he was seeing this from a different perspective. Maybe he was able to experience it. And I read an article one time, and this was just somebody again taking a scientific wild ass guess, but it said that they believed that authors were able to glimpse other worlds in their imagination, and that's where they get their inspiration. And I was like, that's kind of cool, but I wish it was true. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a lot of fun if it is. It's a cool idea, a cool concept.
Well, I mean, there's something. I mean, whether it's the quantum entanglement or I think I saw somebody put on there that maybe he was a remote viewer. Yeah, whatever it is, you don't just write it off as, oh, it's just somebody being creative. I think that's doing him a disservice. Just it was just a creative.
I think it was more than that.
Yeah, he just sat down and created
that level of detail. I mean, to talk about stuff that nobody had ever glimpsed at before, that deep in the earth, and be right. It just blows my mind. It really does.
Johnny, you talking about Scallywag? The website for the knives.
Oh yeah, Jose Sanchez is asking about that's on Scallywag. I'll post that. Miss Lenny, will you post the link for Scallywag for Jose Sanchez? Dorothy Wade says, DA, remote viewing is like dreams given to prophets like Daniel. He saw modern day governments and was told to seal the books up till the end times. It could be. That's why I got the name of this. It was writer, visionary, or prophet. What were these guys predicting? I mean, this is like Nostradamus level stuff and accuracy.
Yeah, and
John Wayne has a great question. He says, DA, what's the story on Shock X? Okay, they make synthetic hemoglobin. They've been around for years. It's actually been issued to combat troops for a long time, and it's a real technology. But I wanted to have something that was more stable because it's still in its infancy, but it does work. So for the Wild Hunt teams, I wanted to kind of take it to the next tech level, and had about a 3 or 4 hour conversation with Doc one night, and that's where we came up with Shock X, which stands for I can't remember what Shock X stands for. Now I've got to look it up. I have to look at it in my own books. But Shock X is synthetic hemoglobin onboard carrier experimental. That's what it is. Synthetic
Yep.
hemoglobin onboard carrier experimental. And the Wild Hunt are testing it. And that's another thing that come to find out Doc and I weren't that far off on, because they are working on something very similar to Shock X. It's just they don't call it that.
Well, yeah. So, but getting back, call it whatever you want to call it. You know, call it remote viewing, call it, you know, echo of the future, or whatever you want to call it. There's something to the fact that a lot of these writers are nailing down this kind of. I mean, I guess fortune telling is the best way to describe it.
I mean,
Because,
like almost like Nostradamus's predictions.
yeah. And somebody mentioned, we hadn't got a chance to start talking about yet, but somebody's already mentioned the island of Dr. Moreau. That's getting into, like we talked about before the show,
Genetic manipulation.
Yeah.
Which that was very few people even knew what genetics were. I mean, the father of modern genetics was a monk named Gregor Mendel, and what he learned of genetic manipulation was by blending species of plants. So the idea of genetically manipulating humans or animals way beyond their scope. I mean, that's not something that even came about, I think, till the 50s or 60s.
Yeah. I will remember Gregor Mendel to the day I die, because that was a question on my 10th grade biology final. The father of modern genetics.
Yeah, that was a question that's always stuck in my mind too.
But so you might could say Around the World in 80 Days was just a reach and he got lucky. You might say he did like you did, and he saw some of the stuff ship wise that was out there, and just made a lucky guess of, okay, well, maybe they could do something like this in the future. So I'm just, maybe. But I don't see how you can look at anything that was going on in that time and get the island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah. Because that was written. The island of Dr. Moreau was written in the late 1800s, and the concept of being able to gene splice animals are just absolutely astounding. That somebody just went, I wonder how we could do this. Unless they were saying that Moreau was basically breeding them that way, but we know for a fact that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you explain, even rationally, even if you're not looking at a conspiracy theory type, you're going to look at it. I don't. It's like Steve trying to explain, the deer hide that night.
Yeah.
Rationally.
Well, back to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Gary mentioned it. They had suits.
Yeah,
Scuba wasn't invented.
Nope.
When was scuba? I think the self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. I don't think that was actually invented until. I know we had diving suits that the Navy used.
Yeah,
but
it was
actual scuba suits were
scuba,
used in.
Because that's the whole thing is self-contained.
Yeah.
The old salvage suits were not self-contained. They had
to have air pumped down to them, and they were basically just big suits of armor with an air hose running.
Yeah. Now that technology was around, but as far as the self-contained where you could move around and not be tethered to the ship, that was probably not till maybe the 30s or 40s.
And was very
Maybe
primitive at the time. I wish my buddy Ryan was in the chat. Um, he's a dive aficionado, and he would know the answer to that. Ryan Bassler. If you guys have read the if you've read Nightmare Hunter, you recognize the name. He's the werewolf in it. I did that as a tribute to my buddy.
the first open circuit scuba system was invented in 1925 by Yves Leprieux, I guess is how you pronounce that, in France.
But look how far the technology for that has come since the old pressure hull diving suits that were tethered to a line, compared to modern Draeger units that can stay
Yeah.
submerged for hours.
Well, and I mean, and you got to think that even before the suits that they could go out, they could go out in the old diving bells, but they couldn't, they couldn't really do much other than just go straight down and do whatever, and then come straight back up. Then the old salvage diver suits, the stuff that like they had in Men of Honor,
Mhm.
that allowed them to be able to kind of move around a little bit more. They still couldn't move freely, but kind of old Carl Brashear, Master Chief Brashear.
Mhm.
Hey Pat, but it's just like you said, it's kind of been a natural progression of that. But there again, they had
Hi, Pat.
scuba suits in that, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we're at the bottom of the hour. We'll take a second, take a quick break. We're going to hear a quick word from Doc and a little bit about Dark Angel Medical.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And y'all don't forget to check out darkangelmedical.com and use discount code Crypted20 for 20% off your entire order. He's also got a really good sale going on right now with Labor Day. So definitely check all those out and, get a kit, be prepared, because the time chooses you. You may not have, the time you need when a critical incident happens. So check them out. And I definitely recommend them very highly. I trusted my life to them on duty, and I still do. Vic, thank you for the super chat, man. Vic says he's got I tell you that I free dived a lot back home in Fiji, and I've seen some weird stuff down there, especially night diving. I would imagine. I mean, I've got a buddy that was with the teams, the Navy teams, and he told me that one time when they were free swimming from a sub to an island, something swam under them that he doesn't even like to think about. He said it was massive. And I said, what was it? He goes, I'd really rather not go into what it was. It still freaks me out to this day. I said, what'd you do? He says, I locked my eyes on where we were going and just kept swimming and hoped it wasn't hungry. He said, I just kicked as hard as I could go and we went to shore.
But
which one were we talking about? Were we talking about Island of Dr. Moreau still?
Yeah. Well, that was the last book we talked about. Oh, we kind of circled back around to scuba a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, there's a whole host of technology that that he had in all those books. I mean, we focus on the sub and the scuba and the mode of transportation and how fast
Hell,
you got
some
around.
of the guns in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea were pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and we still don't have some of that stuff. I mean, obviously we don't have blasters like they have in Star Wars or lightsabers, even though people have constantly been trying to, I think the hacksmiths got kind of close, or as close as is going to be
At least for
humanly,
now.
as close as humanly possible for right now. There's just a lot of variables that you can't have, and that you have to just say, okay, it's fiction. You can't actually have something that works just like this based on the technology we have right now. And I guess
Well,
that's kind of the same
with the
way.
invisible man, we now have that blending technology where you can make somebody invisible.
Well, I mean, technically, if you want to look at the what do they call it, the predator camouflage
Mhm.
that bends light, they've actually, I watched a show one time that they actually did a test on thermal and motion sensing cameras, and they had just one of those little shields and it actually fooled all that technology.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well,
technically,
we've also heard that you can fool um, thermals with a emergency blanket with those mylar sheets. I don't
well,
know. I haven't put that to the test, but it would be worth trying.
I think they actually tested that in MythBusters. And there's another video that I saw a guy do on YouTube. I can't remember what the guy's name was, but they checked or tested the predator versus the mud, and they really thought that it was going to be, a myth, and it wasn't gonna work. So they got one of the most advanced uh, thermals that they could get that is comparable to what the predator would have is they could have. And the guy got out there and he covered himself in mud and laid down, and they panned across and they couldn't find him. So
Dorothy Wade brought up a good point. This was also in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on the Nautilus. They used hydroponics to grow most of their food, but they
yeah,
would still send the divers out to hunt for fish. And that's an idea way ahead of its time.
yeah.
There's so much about that book
Also,
that's just mind blowing.
you can focus on the big things of the scuba and the ship and all that stuff, but there's just about everything technology wise that he wrote about in that book is just next level compared to what they had right then. And it's really not that far behind where we're at right now if you want to stop and think about it.
Well, there's also, when we're talking cryptid encounters, there people have reported seeing that shimmering effect like a predator. Um, Makes you curious as to what that is.
Yeah. As long as you don't hear that little thing that Ryan does, you're okay.
You have the little clicking sound.
Yeah. I can't
Here's
do it.
one. Here's one we haven't touched on yet. The time machine.
The Morlocks.
Yeah. They don't they don't eat regular food. They eat Eloy.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
That's right. Well, that they made a movie about that fairly recently. I think in the last like 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. The
Yeah,
Morlocks were terrifying.
Guy Pearce was in it.
Mhm.
What's the guy was in A Knight's Tale that was played one of Williams' buddies. I can't remember the heavy set one. He was in it. It was actually really good. Like you said, it was a good movie.
It was a good adaptation of the book too.
Yeah.
But again, coming up, this was written in 1895. The the concept of time travel in 1895, holy moly. And then, what was it, 40, 50 years later that Einstein says it's possible.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Did Einstein start looking into it because of this book?
I don't know. You can't say, did H.G. Wells catch a glimpse somehow through his vision of what Einstein would later prove, or did Einstein get who inspired who? It's
I don't.
bizarre. And it make your head hurt thinking about it.
That would be what you call one of those paradoxes.
Mm-hmm.
But and I wish you hadn't said that, because now that makes you want to go back and yeah, who inspired who in any of this stuff?
Right.
Did the person who had the vision see something from the future that from the person who actually invented it or started working on it, or did that person that actually invented it start working on it read what this person and then did that person start working on it because he read what was written, and that person wrote what he wrote because
Yeah, that's
that
the kind of
will
thing make you hear a popping sound in the back of your brain.
that will melt your brain in a hurry.
Yeah. But yeah, the writing books about stuff like that. I mean, it would be like somebody from our time writing a book that is scientifically accurate, and but that's set in the 25th century, and in the 25th century they're like, how the hell did this guy know this technology would exist?
Well, I mean, like somebody said something the other day, like they were still pissed off at the Jetsons because that we were supposed to have flying cars in 2025 and we don't have them. And that's funny, but look at the stuff that we do have now. And if you look at that, the way our technology was going, and we've talked about this before, the way our technology was going prior to the end of World War II to now, we shouldn't be where we're at right now based on where we were
Nikola
going.
Tesla said that one day man will have a device that fits in his breast pocket that he can communicate with anybody in the world in real time. He predicted the cell phone.
Yeah. So it, like you said, it's one of those things that make you hear that little popping sound in the back of your head because your brain just
paradigm shift.
Yeah, it just stripped a gear and went from third to fourth.
Justin Oldfart says, was there any accounts that Wells had near-death experience struck by lightning or something? Not that I know of. I'm not a big Wells scholar. I'm more familiar with his writing than I am with him as a person. But the short bio I read of the guy didn't mention anything, but it wasn't, very lengthy. It just was a very summarized version of his life. So God knows. I mean, maybe he was born with the gift of sight.
Well, you remember the books we talked about from Brian Lumley, the Necroscope series?
Mm-hmm.
Did you read those books or did you not read them? I
haven't read them yet.
Okay. Time traveling vampires. I'll leave it at that. As far as go read them, they're cool. But the theory and how they time travel in that series, and what made me remember about it was somebody just said a Mobius strip. It was a thing called the Mobius continuum, and basically what it did is how they time travel is basically time folded in on itself, and you went through. It was a math equation that the guy saw in his head, and he could freeze that equation at whatever point or destination he needed to, and it would open a door, and time would fold in on itself, and he would just go through the door, and that's where he was. Or actually, how he figured the time travel part of it was he could use the Mobius continuum to travel in anywhere instantaneously in the world, and then he would make that equation inside the Mobius continuum, and that would cause time to fold in on itself, and that's how he do time travel. So it's a very, very interesting series, and it's about 15 or 20 books. So
I need to read those.
Yeah, check them out. It's a pretty good read. It's the first real big series that I ever read. It's Brian Lumley.
Another good one by H.G. Wells is The War of the Worlds.
Yep.
He predicted space battles with other races when we hadn't even flown yet.
Yeah, and probably where Independence Day got the idea of giving the computer virus to.
Hmm. Well, that was
I
also
mean,
the old radio show version they did of War of the Worlds.
yeah, and then the Tom Cruise horrible version.
Well, we'll uh, we'll not go into detail on that one.
No, it did. You know, there's some movies you watch one time just because you're like, well, I'm gonna watch this, and you're like, well, I'm never gonna watch this again. And that's one of those.
Yeah,
I've seen it. That's it.
I've watched a number of movies like that I was just like, okay, I watched it. I'm never watching it again.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any need to ever watch that again because
Um, Antonio Vasquez says, crazy idea, but DA, do you think one day we can grow our own bodies and live forever? The Human Genome Project, which has been completely mapping out human DNA, they predicted that in the not so distant future, that they're going to have the capacity to turn off the aging gene. Now, guaranteed that's only going to be available to the ultra rich, but they're predicting that at one point they're going to be able to switch off human aging, which would be fantastic for long range space exploration.
yeah.
But you know how quickly we would overpopulate this planet?
Well, and
Very fast.
well, like you said, it'd only be for the ultra rich anyway. So all the rest of
Oh,
us
yeah.
normal people would still grow old and die just like we've been doing. Uh, but interesting part of that question about growing. Look at Avatar.
Hmm.
That's how they made those bodies. They grew them, and they grew in the tubes over the however long it took them to get from Earth to Pandora. So I mean, there's already people making movies about that kind of technology, and if you think about Blade 2, that's even though they weren't growing humans, basically
They're
that was
basically recycling them.
that was a human farm. I mean, it was a blood
Mhm.
farm, and they were in suspended animation to harvest their blood and regrow their blood. So I mean, it's in that same vein, I would say.
Dorothy Wade's right. Says we have test tube babies. That's nothing new. House is in the house. What's up,
House in
buddy?
the house.
But we're just barely touching on some of these works these guys have made, and they were generations, and I don't use that lightly, generations ahead of their time on this technology.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you can really start spinning your head around in circles trying to think of because, like I said, if you fall into that, oh well, he just read what we were doing, or somebody read what he wrote, and they did, and you really just start spinning your wheels and turning around going, well, how? Because there was not anything sufficient enough during that time for him to look at it and say, yeah, we could have this. And I don't think there was such a sufficient time from the time he wrote that to the time we actually had anything like that. I don't know how that 100% inspired what we have now, because that is so far advanced from where it started to where it went. It's like, I could understand if he wrote about what you know the Hunley or the Monitor or the Merrimack or some of the very first sub, but he's writing about stuff that is comparable to almost to what we've got right now. That's where the disconnect for me is.
Hey,
Is
Roy.
it's like he skipped, years and years and years of prototypes and working prototypes and actual working vehicles that were actually in practice and in war and doing this stuff to go to, one of the top levels that we're at as far as submarines go. And that
Right.
that just blows my mind.
I mean, the early subs of World War I and II were primitive compared to what the Nautilus was.
Yeah. So,
And that was the pinnacle of our technology decades after he wrote that book.
so if he inspired the people who made the submarines, why were they not attempting to make them just like what was in the book then? Because that's generally what happens. And they were nowhere near that for years. So it just, like I said, that's the disconnect for me. Of, what's up, Roy? Because it's like, if somebody writes about a bow and arrow in a book, and somebody reads it and says, "Ooh, I like that," they're gonna go out and that's what they're gonna try to build, is what they just read about. But if somebody writes about a gun in a book, they don't go out and try to make a bow and arrow or a slingshot. Ooh, I like that gun. I'm gonna make a slingshot. It's weird.
Well, there's a lot of things like gunpowder's been around for a long time, but like talking about the advanced weapons that they had on the Nautilus, those were like energy weapons. I mean, where did that come from? That was nowhere near on the drawing board.
Well, I mean, like I said, we really still don't have anything comparable to that.
Larry Berlin says, "DA, have you ever covered Edgar Rice Burroughs?" No, we didn't. Probably. Well, let me pull up a bibliography of his books, and maybe we'll throw him in there too.
I like some of his books. I like the John Carter series.
Mm-hmm. Well, John Carter on Mars.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
Now, that's almost like a cloning technology, though.
Yeah, almost like the technology on Avatar.
Yeah,
he wasn't really there; his body was back on Earth.
Yeah. So, what was that? I mean, basically, it transfers his consciousness across space, and then builds him a body that looks and acts just like what he left on Earth. I mean, that's where do you come up with something like that?
Yeah, that was unheard of technology. Hell, we couldn't even do it today.
How do you go from Tarzan to John Carter Mars?
Yeah. And now, granted, Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a little after these guys. He was in the 1915s, the early part of the 1900s. But still, the stuff he was writing about was just mind blowing. Sorry, I was looking at some of his other books.
Yeah, let's see. He wrote John Carter Mars. He wrote
Princess of Mars, Gods of Mars, The Warlord of Mars, Thuvia, Maid of Mars, The Chessmen of Mars, The Mastermind of Mars. These were written from 1912 to about 1964. John Carter of Mars was written was a book based on two stories from 1940 and 1943. But he did this whole Mars series plus the Tarzan, all the Tarzan books, and he was at the Earth's core. He wrote in 1914.
Which At the Earth's Core was a lot like Journey to the Center of the Earth.
I could certainly see where one inspired the other.
Yeah. That was definitely inspired by
Pirates of Venus, 1932. Lost on Venus, 1933. The Wizard of Venus, that was written in 1941, but not published until 1970. The Land That Time Forgot. That's a great one.
Yeah, I forgot who did that one.
I did too.
That was the one. Doug McClure was in all. He was in Land That Time Forgot, and he was in what was the other one? It was At the Earth's Core. He was in that one too.
Mm-hmm. He did. I didn't know that Edgar Rice Burroughs did westerns. He wrote several westerns. But this dude was a prolific writer and predicted a lot of fantastic technologies. I mean, like the technology that transferred John Carter to Mars, that still doesn't exist.
No, and I don't know how in the world that something like that would exist, because I mean, your
It would have
conscience.
to exist much like the way Avatar, where the consciousness passed into another body, but the body was just instantly created on Mars. I mean,
Yeah.
how did that happen?
But then when he goes back, it instantly
Is that
transferred.
like a form of telelocation?
But he goes back and he's, this is something that always kind of baffled me, I guess is the best way to say it. What's the time lapse from the time that he transfers till the time because he was only on Mars, in judging by the movies, obviously, because that's a lot easier to kind of visualize it rather. But it appeared he was only on there, let's just say a couple of weeks at the most.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a couple of weeks at the most. But when he goes back, the guy that was in there with him is already a skeleton. His body's stiffened up. There's spider webs everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
how long is the transfer? So when he finally got the stuff and he went back, was he only gone a couple of seconds up there or had even more time passed?
That starts jumping into the time travel angle of it. But a day on Mars is much shorter than a day on Earth. Its orbit's closer.
So he would have been gone a lot longer on Mars than he would have on Earth then, right? Or the other way around?
I don't know how it would work, man. Giving myself a headache just thinking about it.
I know. Hey, these little details are stuff we got to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah. I'm just in awe of some of the ideas these writers came up with. They've got to have been gifted with some sort of sight. They had to have been looking into the future, or they have some of the most creative minds I've ever heard of.
Well, I mean, obviously you have to be very astute at keeping up with details and very, like you making your writing the names down of everybody that's in a firefight and making a tick beside their name every time they shoot. That kind of attention to detail, not everybody has that. And you have to have stuff like that, in my opinion, to be that kind of a writer and be the kind of writer that, for most of me and for most everybody in the chat, one of the reasons we like your writing is because you make it so real world. But on the other hand, you got these other writers who make things out of this world, but it's believable though in a certain way. I mean, it's far-fetched, but the way they write about it, it's almost like, well, yeah, that's kind of. But he explained it so well that it's almost like he kind of knows that it really is either going to exist or it could exist somewhere anyway. So you can suspend your disbelief just because of how competent they write it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's just kind of.
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. We're at the top of the hour. I'm going to do something a little different tonight.
Here you go again, throwing curveballs.
Yeah, throwing a curveball. It's not necessarily one of our regular sponsors, but we'll let you watch this. This was made for me by the Miss Naoma, and I just wanted to throw it out there. I haven't done it in a while.
From the mind of author D.A. Roberts. Cryptids, Lakeview Man, Apex Predator, Codename Wild Hunt, Zombies, the Ragnarok Rising Saga. Science fiction and fantasy, Lost Legion. Find them all at daroberts.net or amazon.com.
And that's a little bit of an older one. I've got several more books out since that was done, but I still like that commercial. She did a great job on it. Thought I'd shamelessly plug my own stuff tonight.
Yeah, why not? You shamelessly plugged my stuff Wednesday night, so or had me do it.
Little Patty looked it up on the Googles. A day on Mars is longer than a day on Earth, about 40 minutes longer.
Well, see, there's the Googles coming in handy again.
That's right. The Googles save the day.
That's right. Got to have the Googles. You're welcome.
David Neal, thank you. I can't take credit for that. Miss Naoma Finn made that for me. And Casey says, I own them all. Thank you much, man. I'm hoping to have another one out here soon.
And it's going to be a good one.
I hope so. I think you guys will like it. Dorothy Wade says, the Googles gives me the giggles.
It'll do that.
Chris Burkhardt says, Mars is further away than the sun. We're the third rock Mars is for. I forgot about that. I was thinking Mercury, not Mars. I don't know why I had those two switched in my head.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to it either.
Heck, the Edgar Rice Burroughs, I mean, one of those books was called The Synthetic Men of Mars. That's talking about androids, android technology. And that book was written in 1939.
Yes, Kevin, we've been trying to get that through to
I
some
would
people.
love for that to happen. Get one of my books made into a movie. Dr. 45 120 says, DA, which series will the new book belong to? A new series. The book is going to be called Heart of Iron. And it's the first of my fantasy series, but it ties in with the other side of the portal to where we lost our people. Well, that all ties in.
As do they all.
Greg House is absolutely right. Miss Naoma is awesome.
Yep.
I thought about, like, one of these nights maybe doing a custom short story and have you, me, Doc, and Steve read our parts as ourselves and then have somebody else like narrate the story.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about doing that with the Dark Frontier series. It's just a matter of getting everybody together to be able to do it. That would be cool if we could ever get it done that way.
Yeah, we'd have to set it up if we were going to do a Dark Frontiers like that. We would have to probably set it up well ahead of time.
Yeah,
we might even have to pre-record it. Doing it live would be interesting. Mrs. Moon says, what about H.P. Lovecraft? I hope to God what he predicted, what he was talking about in his books doesn't come true. Take a big old pass on that. His writings were terrifying. I loved John Wayne Gates says Clint Bruce. Clint will be back in the next Wild Hunt book.
Yep.
Clint's a hell of a guy, too. He really is. Mondoc says he's down. He has a good mic. Well, if we can get the details worked out, we may get a hold of you. Northwest Native Tracker says that'd make a great Halloween event. I'm thinking for Halloween this year, I may just pick one of my short stories and just read it. one of the ones that hasn't been done before. Or I might just write a new one for it. I mean, I've got time. Hey, Sentinel's in the house.
Sentinel.
What's up, man? Casey Calloway says he really well. That he wants to hear more about that dwarf. Well, you're definitely going to get it. Heart of Iron. He's the primary character. Dr. 45-120. Has anybody heard about a new fiction Bigfoot movie in the making? I have not. I have not heard anything about a new one. Yeah, Mondoc. That always kills interest in books to me too. Like if they talk about flicking the safety off on a Glock, or you know, or I don't know. There's lots of little things. Referring to a magazine as a clip, that's another killer for me. M1 Garand has a clip. A Glock does not. A Glock has a magazine. And for those of you that don't know the difference, a clip holds ammunition, a magazine feeds ammunition.
Clips are for rifles.
AJ Congdon says, do Demons 1 and 2 for Halloween. Ooh, that'd be a big one. Because I know those stories are both about the same length as the Will Grey Eagle story I wrote that Cam did, and that would be hours long. I think that one's, I want to say 6 or 7 hours long.
Yeah, I think so.
Greg House says, I can narrate, but it'd be Red Billy extreme. Subtitles needed. I'm pretty sure converted into sign language would be illegal. Yeah, boy.
House.
Something coming up with something special for Halloween. Let me take a look at the calendar real quick. See what date Halloween falls on this year. The 31st is on a Thursday, so that means we can either do the Halloween show on the 30th or do an additional show as a special on Halloween night. Let me think about that one. What do y'all think? Which would you prefer? Would you rather us do our Halloween special on our regular Wednesday show? Or would you like us to do a Halloween special on that Thursday?
Yeah, hopefully I won't turn into a werewolf again. That was a pain in the butt.
Bubba the Redneck Werewolf.
Yep.
AJ says bonus episode.
Took me forever to get rid of them fleas.
Still scratching on the beard. I just got the mental image of you sitting on the edge of your bed trying to scratch your beard with your foot.
Whoa.
Well,
yeah, it Dot play. I was hoping one of y'all would play it. Dot played right into it perfectly. He did, because I was doing like that. He was like, "Please mess with you again." Yeah. That was a fun night.
Kevin Bode says you'll just be getting home from Ohio. No, Halloween is a couple weeks after the Ohio trip. That's like the 11th, 12th of 11th, 12th, 13th, that ballpark.
We'll be coming back on the 13th of because the festival is the 11th and 12th.
Ed Peak says he's retiring on November 1st and wants us to make it a special show as that's his last day of work. Well, we'll see what we can do. It looks like we've had a few for each side, but an extra show is doable. And David Neal says do a Halloween special. Halloween. Halloweeny, Mrs. Moon.
Was it last year or 2 years ago is when we dressed up, but last year we just did a show, just a regular show, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think we just told spooky stories.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'd have to look. Because I know last year we did monsters leading up to Halloween.
Yeah.
Billy Mitchum says, not a problem till your foot gets caught in your collar.
Hey. You know.
Yeah, I think we'll probably
Real
end up doing a bonus show for Halloween.
real world problems for the modern werewolf. What can I say?
That's right. Modern problems require modern solutions.
Yep.
What about any other authors y'all thought of? You know, I know Edgar Rice Burroughs was one that we hadn't really thought about. H.G. Wells is a great author. Um, you know, we've already talked about Jules Verne. I mean, these are authors that were way ahead of their time. But there's other authors out there that have done it too. And this is by no means all of them. It's just the ones that quickly came to mind.
We played Bigfoot last year on Halloween. That was what we did on
Uh,
Halloween. So it was 3 years ago that we dressed up. Then 2 years ago we did the monsters leading up to it, and last year we played Bigfoot. I was thinking there was something else in the middle of it, but I couldn't remember. So that's why I was just like, but
yeah, I
thank you,
wasn't
Wyatt.
sure either.
You
Thanks,
got that.
Wyatt. Oh, speaking of which, I was talking to Noah when I think he's about ready to do that again. I know Doc's still having computer issues, so we may, you know, here's a thought. Um, we could see if, you know, maybe we could do a contest, and the winner of the contest gets to join us on the Bigfoot game. Because without Doc,
Or that might be a good time to do what
because we
Tyler.
need 4.
Well, what Tyler's make
Mhm.
it would be ready. That might be a good. You want to see if
Here's,
anybody be interested in that.
go ahead, and mention it. You know, it's you and Tyler's idea.
Well, it was Tyler's idea, not. All right. Now, I'm not. I don't know a whole lot about Dungeons and Dragons. DA and Noah and I think Steve have played it. I know what it is, but I ain't never played it. Anyway, most of y'all know Taylor, my daughter, and you've heard of Tyler. Well, they're kind of big into it. So Tyler is wanting to, or not wanting to. He's actually already in the process of making it a Dungeons and Dragons type game for us based on the DA verse. So we're already all starting to make our characters where Tyler and Taylor would moderate the game on here. Taylor would help keep up with the chat, and Doc, DA, myself, Noah, and probably Steve would play the game on the show. That might be a possibility for a Halloween special. What do y'all think about that?
Mike Prine says Ernest Hemingway, another great writer, but I don't know that he really predicted much future technology. He was more of a contemporary writer. Ooh, Open Coloring Book says, so here's a thought. What if Jules Verne doorways to other worlds are true? Pictures in for ETs on Earth, as in Earth ends like a Bucky's with actual doors opening to other worlds. That would be freaking wild. There was a game based on that. Tales from the Floating Vagabond was the name of it, and this bar was just like in pocket space, and every time the door opened, it opened to another random place. So you would have, you know, people from like the Middle Ages sitting down to have a drink with people from the future, and it was an interesting game, but it was weird. It was definitely one of those weird games.
AJ said Gene Roddenberry.
Roddenberry was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roddenberry was definitely ahead of his time. A lot of the Star Trek technology is stuff that we take for granted today. I mean, this being one of them. I mean, it may not be a tricorder, but it does everything up to including the communicator. And they said the original flip phone design was based off of, you know, Kirk flipping that open.
Well, and think about, you remember Nextels?
Yeah,
That sound that it made was an awful lot like.
sure was. Little Patty says she still wants to see us play Bigfoot again.
Well, we're not talking about not playing Bigfoot. It's just Doc's got computer issues that he couldn't jump on and play, but he didn't have to have. He can get on and just be like we are right now to do that. That's what we're talking about. That would be something that would be easier for us to all set up and do for a Halloween show.
Michelle Richardson says Mr. DA can be Gimli on Lord of the Rings. We dwarves are natural sprinters, very dangerous over short distances. Do they really have a game called Werewolf? Yes, they do. It came out years and years ago.
Yep.
I've never played it, but I know a lot of people that did.
Yes, I've actually got the I can't remember which one it is, but I've got one of the Doc Savage books. That's
Orson Scott Card's another good author that predicted a lot of hot future technology. Orson Scott Card wrote Ender's Game, didn't he?
I think so. I think I should have wrote that.
Pretty sure that, yeah.
That was another movie that kind of fell
Yeah, the
far
movie
short of the
wasn't
book.
great, but the book was good.
Yeah, the book was
in high
great. The
school.
movie was just kind of like, eh.
Well, they didn't do it right.
No, which they hardly ever do, though. I mean,
Nick, we mentioned Robert E. Howard.
yep.
Yeah, Robert E. Howard is in a class by himself. I mean, some of the stuff he came up with.
And if any of y'all, if you like Robert Howard and you want to learn more, because I'm a big Conan fan, I've always have been.
Same here.
But that abridged version that I got off Audible, and it was one of the if I'm want to think right, it's one of the Audible titles that you can just get. You don't have to have a credit to get it. If you got a membership, and before each book, it gets into a breakdown of why he wrote this book, what it was about, how it ties in to the whole lore and legacy and legend and everything. I learned a lot, and I still haven't finished with it, but I've learned a lot about. I mean, I didn't. There was a lot of stuff I didn't know about Robert Howard until I read that.
Ryan said you guys should play Folklore Hunter. I don't even know. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that game.
Never heard of it.
Gary Lowe is right. World War Z could have been much better.
Yeah.
Open Color Rick says, seriously, I had to haul drunks in for screaming about werewolves. One seemed to have a breakdown and put in a hold. Yeah, there was actually a game that's called Werewolf, and
Yep.
and there are live action role playing versions of it. And one of the reasons I never played it was because some of them did get out of hand, and they really took it a little too seriously. So I enjoyed playing role playing games, but I was still able to differentiate life from the game, and some people just weren't able to do that. Dorothy Wade says, "Did any of you hear that Ron Howard died?" No, I hadn't heard anything about that. Huh? She said I saw it on Microsoft News.
I'm looking at it now. It still says Ronald William Howard is an American Academy Award winner. Doesn't say anything about him.
I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, according to everything I've seen, CNN, all those, nothing saying anything about him dying. Because usually, like the IMDb will pop that up and it'll say was, but it still says is an Academy Award winning filmmaker.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any article about him passing away. That doesn't mean he hasn't. I'm just not seeing it. If you look Ron Howard News, the first thing that comes up is Ron Howard is a special guest on the 50th episode of Don't Kill the Messenger. Yeah, I don't see anything about him passing away. Hope it's not true. He's a good director. Ryan says, Folklore Hunter, you get to fight a Wendigo, Ye Natalushi, and Strigoi. That would be pretty interesting. Is it what platform is that on? Lil Patty says, I like Stephen King movies more than his books. Really don't like reading his books. I liked his books better, and I know this is going to sound bad, but I liked his books better before his accident, before he got hit by that guy. No, that drunk. I think it was a drunk driver that hit him.
Yep.
But I liked his books before because they were more well thought out. After he got out of the hospital, it's almost like he's phoning them in. They're just not as creative as they used to be, at least in my opinion. Chris Burkhardt says, I gave up role playing games and now going broke playing Warhammer 40K. Played that in college too. I used to have an Orc and an Eldar army. Yeah, you can really invest a lot of cash in building armies.
No, I'm not I'm more of a Call of Duty and that kind of.
Same here. I'm not big on it. I've never played World of Warcraft. I'm not saying I wouldn't play it, but I like more like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, that kind of thing.
I do like my Ark though. That's a pretty cool game.
Mm-hmm. Miss Moon says it's a hoax that I guess the Ron Howard thing.
Yeah.
Noah's been trying to get me to play Star Trek Online, and I may have to give in and actually play it. I don't play many games anymore, but it looks like it's a lot of fun. Yeah, Dorothy Wade, unfortunately, people do that. They'll post videos like that for clickbait to just get numerous clicks.
But speaking of Stephen King, that's another one that most all his books are interconnected, even though you don't see characters from one go into another. They're all in the same universe. They're all mostly around Maine.
Yeah.
And I think I watched a video on this one time, but I think the Man in Black actually does turn up in a few more books and some of the movies. But they like the Man in Black and Pennywise. They were speculating if they were both from the same galaxy or same dimension, whatever, kind of sort of the same type of entity. But it was kind of interesting when you think about it, because
David Neal, that works fine for me because we play Bigfoot on Steam.
Yep.
Speaking of that, we need to play it. I mean, not necessarily on the live. We just need to play it again. We haven't played in forever.
Yeah, I know. I hadn't either. It's probably I hadn't even checked to see if it needs an update.
It probably does. I have something else I was going to say, and I completely lost my train of thought. Ryan Tremblay, he says, I actually was talking to Stephen King not too long ago. He complimented me on my Wendigo work. That is awesome. That is freaking awesome, dude. Thanks, little Patty. Open Comic Book says Roddenberry and Edgar Rice Burroughs are phenomenal. Yes, they are. Michelle Richardson says if you listen to Dark Side of the Moon, in the dark you can time travel. Well, yeah, it's kind of like Pink Floyd The Wall. I've never watched that sober, and probably wouldn't enjoy it much if I did.
Yeah, I was about to say you wouldn't enjoy it if you're not sober or high.
That I've been playing. He says, "What do you need to know? D&D is my game." I've been playing D&D since about '82. I still have all of my original first edition AD&D books. In fact, if it weren't for the green screen, you could be able to see them. They're just right over here. I got shelves of D&D stuff. Stephen King once said that it took him, I think it was 15 years to become an overnight success. I've been doing this for 12 years now, since I've put the first book out.
3 years to go.
I just hope that I get the chance to have one of my books noticed by somebody in Hollywood, because that's where Stephen King's career. I mean, he was a bestseller. Don't get me wrong, but his career really skyrocketed I think it was when Carrie
Carrie, yeah.
was made into a movie.
And then Christine and
Christine was so good.
what was after that? Maybe Carrie,
Sometime
Christine,
after Christine was The Dead Zone. That was pretty.
Dead Zone, and
Movie
then
was weird.
probably the Tommy Knockers and
Salem's
Silver
Lot
Bullet.
was one of the early ones.
Salem's Lot was actually before. Yeah, that was in 76 or 77, I think.
I remember the original movie had David Soul from Starsky and Hutch in it.
Yep.
That was a good movie.
Dude, that when he's in there in that morgue and he's taping up that cross and he's doing the Lord's Prayer and he keeps looking at the clock, knowing that he's coming out of it. Oh, dude, that scares me.
That scene gets me every time. Or the one where he walks in and that guy's in the rocking chair. And you see his eyes glowing like, ooh.
Was that Jeffrey Jones? It was his character.
I think it was.
Yeah,
I think that was the guy.
Yeah, he looked freaking creepy as all get out when they vamped him up. I mean, he's not exactly the I won't talk bad about him, but he's not exactly the Mr. GQ.
Yeah, he's not. He's not subtle looking on most occasions, but as a vampire, he was even more weird looking. Pretty terrifying. Open Coloring Book says role play D&D in caves drunk. We used to play it in the steam tunnels below Missouri State University.
Billy, no, we didn't forget it. I said Silver Bullet. I said Silver Bullet before.
Silver Bullet's a great movie.
Yes, it's
one of my still better than the movie, but it was a good movie.
It was one of my all-time favorite werewolf movies. Ask DA, I'll never forget Silver Bullet. That'll always when we talk with Stephen King, I'll always mention Silver Bullet. No. I'm a little too old to play the Hardy Boys being Reverend Werewolf. Greatest movie line ever. Greatest movie line ever.
Northwood says the scariest horror story I ever saw ended when I got divorced.
Oh, Northwoods.
Greg says, how in the world does anyone watch the crap that M. Night Shyamalan does? I don't know. I liked
his first few movies
was
good.
Pretty good.
His first
and I liked Signs. I liked Signs a lot too. But we around here we jokingly refer to him as M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong.
See, Sixth Sense was so good, and he felt like he had to always throw some kind of twist in a movie like that because that's what made Signs so good, or Sixth Sense so good. And then he tries to throw that twist in. Was it The Village, where they thought it was kind of like loosely based on Red Riding Hood. Was that what it was called, The Village? Where
yes.
Bryce Dallas Howard was blind.
Yeah, that was a stupid movie.
Yeah, that
I did not like it.
Yeah, I liked it up until probably about 10 minutes into the second act, and I was like, okay, this is really stupid. Because it started out really good. And then as you start figuring the plot out, you're like, oh my God, no. And then by the third act, I was just like, I'm done with this. And then that other one that Bryce Dallas Howard was in, where there was a pool out behind the house, and there was some kind of creature living in the pool or some kind of in it. What was that one?
I've seen that one.
I can't remember the name of that. And that one was stupid.
I don't think I've seen that one.
The point is that Sixth Sense and Signs were really good. The ones in between that
spiraled from there.
Yeah, the ones in between those two were horrible.
Brett, I haven't seen the Rob Lowe version of Salem's Lot.
It was in the 90s, I want to say. That's when that came out. It wasn't bad, but it was kind of like, it was almost like they did Piranha. It was almost a shot-for-shot remake. They changed a few things here and there, but it wasn't as bad how they redid Piranha with William Catt
Mhm.
from Greatest American Hero.
I
It wasn't that bad. It was 2004. Okay, I thought it was in the 90s. But anyway, it was the same thing. It was just kind of like same story, basically the same characters, same lines, but they changed things here and there just to make things a little bit more modern. If I'm remembering right, it's been a long time since I've seen that one, but
There's some good scenes in Salem's Lot too.
yeah,
Especially that first one.
yeah, the
I haven't seen the Rob Lowe one, but the book is damn good too.
yeah, the scene where his buddy comes back
Gary.
trying to get in the house, or trying to get him to let him in the house after his friend got turned into the vampire, and he's outside trying to get him to let me in. Ooh, that's creepy too.
Dorothy, you're right. The train now is officially off the rails. Yeah, we kind of got sidetracked, but it's still, we're still kind of talking about different writers, especially with some of these ones that are ahead of their time. But Stephen King kind of did some of that stuff first too. I mean, he might not have predicted advanced technology, but he certainly predicted some things that would become staples in the horror community. But again, we, like you said, we were talking about more about the ones that were breaking design. Um, some of the sci-fi writers, Philip K. Dick. I mean, Philip K. Dick predicted some pretty amazing stuff. If those of you who aren't familiar with him, he's the guy that wrote the original version of Blade Runner. It was originally called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" Philip K. Dick was a great sci-fi writer. Asimov was ahead of his time. Um, Man, there was just so many of those early sci-fi authors that were, you know, coming up with a lot of great stuff. But every bit of that falls back to like War of the Worlds and some of the writers in the late 1800s, early 1900s that were just knocking stuff out of the park. Greg House says, just think of the smarts it took to make a movie like Blair Witch Project with a budget of $92 and a bag of weed.
Yes, that movie was ingenious, but all the crap that it spawned after that, it was a cash grab of that. Not so much.
Ryan says they did a parody of that scene in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Get away from my window, you're a floating man. Come on. I've never watched Buffy, so I'll take your word for it on that one. I like my horror to be not cheesy, so that's why I never watched that show. I just wasn't interested.
I never watched the show. I watched the actual movie because I was a big Christy Swanson fan. But
Little Patty says we need to do a show just on movies. We could do a month on just movies. I mean, there's so many movies out there that we all love, and heck, we could do an entire show just throwing around Tombstone quotes.
we almost just about have.
Yeah, it's a couple times we came pretty close. Barry Beezer says he'd like to hear us talk about my stuff.
We've done that too.
Yeah, we have done that, but we should probably do it some more.
Yeah.
That was actually the original point of the show, was to talk about creepy stuff, but also to profile my books.
Well, let's jump into some of your books then.
Well, it's the bottom of the hour, so you want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag for about a minute, and then we'll talk about books.
Sure, let me get my S word out here. Scallywag Tactical. If you want cool stuff like this and cool stuff like that, go check out Scallywag Tactical. Check out the Blemish Blades. Check out everything under the sun that they've got. They've got Scally Swag, which is stuff other than just knives. Use code DA Roberts 10 at checkout, and anything you put in your cart, and if it comes from the Blemish Blade section or the Scally Swag, wherever it came from, you can get 10% off of that. And there's a lot of new blades coming. They've merged with Gray's Customs and another company that they've actually Bought out or merged with DA?
They're partnering with.
Partnering with. So there's he already had some of the coolest blades there, and if not for nothing, some of the coolest names of knives. So go check them out. Tell them we sent you. Scallywag Tactical, code DA Roberts 10 at checkout. That's all I got to say about that. So, what do we want to talk about? Sorry, I had to pull my Cody Rhodes out since he retained his title today.
Mary Coles is talking about Tombstone. Netflix has a series called Earp versus the Cowboys. Oh, I might have to check that out. Ryan, you're right. We still need to do a show on Pumpkinhead. We're going to do that sometime in October. Don says he loves his Jolly Roger. Hell yeah, mine too. I love that knife.
Me too.
Like the American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
Finally started carrying my Sailor Assisted folder again a little bit. I had kind of stopped carrying it when I got my Wahoo.
I'm going to have to pick up another Sailor Assisted folder because I seem to have misplaced mine. I cannot find it.
It's kind of hard to misplace mine, that bright copper color and black with it. Yeah.
Well, mine's black and silver, so you'd think I would be able to see it, but I think it's in one of my jackets that I haven't worn since winter. So I may stumble across it in the next couple months.
You will. You'll pick that jacket up, put it on, and be like, ha, there it is.
There that son of a gun is. If I'm outside the house, I've got 2 to 3 pocket knives on at least one handgun and a med kit. Oh, Josh Dalton's right. Yeah, in October there are 10 new blades coming out.
That's why I said I can't name them all, but I just said there's a bunch of new blades coming. I mean,
Greg House says, well, y'all, before I forget it, please look up the story about Aunt Jenny Johnston, Bankhead Forest. I'll have to hunt that up. Casey Calloway says, I've got a Wyatt Earp family member just down the road from me here. That's cool. Dorothy Wade says, what if Jack the Ripper had access to scallywag knives? Whatever he used was pretty damn sharp, so.
Yeah.
Vic Kumar says, most writers of sci-fi are either on the spectrum or diagnosed. You might be onto something there. Curtis Murray says, would you all consider doing a raffle for a subscriber to be on a live panel? We might do that. That sounds like that might be interesting. Greg House says, it's a true story, Civil War area. Home guard killed her husband and son, and she got revenge. I will definitely check that out. Josh Dalton says the names of the new blades haven't been released yet. Sorry, my back's hurting a little bit. However, the wound on my chest is pretty much just completely. It's still red.
Right, Ryan. Watchers from Dean Koontz was actually Stephen King. Is that what you're saying?
Unless there was a Stephen King Watchers, but the Dean Koontz Watchers was pretty damn good.
Yeah, book was really good. Movie wasn't bad.
Galloway says if he was on the panel, he'd have to wear a fez. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Watchers was Dean Koontz.
Yeah, Watchers was Dean Koontz, but I don't know if there was another Watchers. Because what else?
I don't know. I'd have to do some digging on that one.
Now that's another one where the book is really different than the movie.
Mm-hmm.
A lot different.
The next Lakeview Man book I've already started at. I've tentatively titled it Lakeview Man: Dead of Winter. But some of the action in that is going to be very based on what we actually experienced in Combs Ferry. Granted, it's going to be ramped up for the book, but the locations you guys are going to know.
So I finally get to punch Logan in the face in this one.
I don't know if you'll be in this one. You're with the Wild Hunt. Logue doesn't run into them often.
That's true. We're going to be we're somewhere else at that, probably at that particular junction. Maybe somewhere else.
Maybe so.
Maybe somewhere kind of a long ways off. Just saying.
Maybe.
May not be a hop, skip, and a jump away.
Ow. Sorry. It looks like I'm going to have another ablation done. I've already been to see my pain management doctor. My back is starting to get bad again. So we're already making the first steps to getting a second ablation.
But that it lasted about as long as they told you it would last, didn't it?
They said 2 years, sometimes a little more, and it's been about 19 months. So
Yeah, because
close to 2 years.
You got it right before you went to Gatlinburg, right?
The first time, yeah.
Yeah.
I just recovered from it. Yeah, so it's been close to 2 years. I think I got it in January or February of 23. It was the early part of 23 when I got it. Thank you, Miss Lene. But because, and this is, you gotta love dealing with insurance, but because this is in a slightly different place than before, they're actually going to do the ablation a little higher. Now I have to go through both rounds of the preemptive shots to make sure it's going to work before they'll agree to pay for the ablation again. So it's
I
a
love
pain in the
insurance.
butt. So it's probably going to be 3 to 4 months before I wind up getting the actual ablation. Casey Calloway says, DA, my wife had the stimulator put in about a year ago and seems to be helping her. I may bring that up to pain management if the ablation doesn't work again. But the ablation, which was non-invasive, lasted for about 18 months. So I don't mind going in every year and a half to 2 years to get it done again because it's a quick process. It only took, I was in and out in about 20 minutes when I did the last ablation. Billy Mitchum says, just read Cry of the Wendigo for a second time. That's awesome. Josh, yeah, I'm going to have some stuff for the Alpha team here pretty soon. Sorry, Miss Lene. Well, I think she's talking about the pain management. Yeah, waiting sucks. And they were supposed to have called me back this week to set up the appointment for the first round of shots, but I didn't hear anything from them. So I'll give them till Tuesday or Wednesday. And if I haven't heard from them, I'll call them back. Because it's not as bad as it was, but it's getting pretty bad. Sorry, Richie, missed 85% of tonight. What'd you miss? We were talking about some of the great writers of the past, how they predicted things that they should have had no way of knowing about. Dorothy, I'm sorry about the ads. That's on YouTube. But since that is part of how we get paid for the show, it's not a lot. But if we went in and shut off all of the ads, we wouldn't get any revenue from the show at all. Yeah, Casey, they'd talked to me about the spinal stimulator before, and I may mention it again if it looks like these things are going to keep wearing off. But inevitably, the damage in my back, the stimulator doesn't fix anything. It just makes it not hurt. But inevitably, the damage to my lower back is bad enough that there is a time, and I'm hoping it's in the distant future, but realistically, it's probably in the next 5 to 10 years, where I will be chairbound, and it's just going to happen. I mean, I'll fight it as long as I can, but it's just going to happen. Greg, I don't know about some amateur chiropractic maneuvers on me. I don't want you doing a people's elbow from the top rope onto the middle of my back.
Oh, Greg, it'd be more like being the Stone Cold Stunner.
Yeah. Boom. And then you get up and chug a beer.
Yeah, I fancy Greg more of a Stone Cold than a Rock.
Ryan mentioned Mary Shelley, Frankenstein. That was ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time. I mean, the Invisible Man, by that same token.
Yep.
Yeah, that way ahead of its time. I mean, these ideas, well, Mary Shelley's idea wasn't necessarily that she was predicting it. It was based on rumors that supposedly happened at Frankenstein's castle back in, I think, in the 1500s.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, thank you for the super chat, Casey. Appreciate you, man.
Which there again, that there's that element we talked about the most fantastical story, or some of the most fantastical stories having that element of truth in it, because Frankenstein's castle was a real place, and all this stuff there was rumors of it really going on. So
yeah, he was grave robbing and doing experiments on corpses, and he supposedly the doctor that lived there was trying to come up with some sort of potion or something along those lines that would make men immortal, and it never came to pass. Ryan says, "Hey now, Da, people's elbow just happens to be the most electrifying move in sports entertainment." I remember when the people's elbow.
Don't pay the electric bill then.
Yeah, I remember when the people's elbow was Dusty Rhodes' move called the avalanche.
They had the bionic elbow.
That's right, the bionic elbow. Dusty Rhodes, the American dream.
Walk a mud hole in you, thump a mud hole in you, walk it dry. Smack your naked and hide your clothes. Because I'm the bull of the woods and I'm so pretty.
Yeah, wrestling was so bizarre back in the 70s. Greg says he'll write me a prescription for moonshine. Well,
that's definitely an all-natural muscle relaxer. I will give you that, House.
Funny you should mention homemade whiskey, but it ain't moonshine that I've got. I'm gonna have a glass of something when we close the show out. I've been drinking tea and water up to this point. Torsten says, finally made it to a live show again. DA, Robbie, if you don't mind, start from the beginning again.
I don't remember where the beginning was.
I don't remember. We're so far off the track now. Billy Mitchum says, how about the John Wee? Now we're into wrestling. Casey says, DA, your mind has a lot to do with what your body does. They told me after I got hurt if I ever walked again, I'd never pick up 20 pounds. They were wrong. Well, my surgeon 4 years ago told me, I don't know how you're walking now. I said, sheer stubborn determination. He said, I've got the lower spine of a 95-year-old man, and that was 4 years ago.
Kind of like my 80-year-old knees.
Yeah, my lower back. And the first time they looked at the MRI of my lower back, they were like, Jesus, how are you even walking? They kept trying to push opioids on me at pain management. I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want them. I'd rather be in pain than take those. So pass.
Chat's gonna get me started in wrestling, DA.
Oh no!
They're talking about the Weaver lock and Dusty had to put them in the Weaver lock.
We used to refer to the bionic elbow as the Fatalanche. He was a big dude.
Yeah, but Dusty was athletic for his size.
For a dude that fat, he was strong as hell.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Uh,
Kevin Sullivan and Sid Vicious just died.
mhm. Don Donaldson says, Robbie, can you engrave on a gun that's Cerakoted?
Probably. It's just depending on what color it's Cerakoted. I don't know how well it's going to show up, but I can engrave on it. It's just I don't know. I can't make a promise of how good it's going to show up because if it's a lighter color, then it may not show up too well. But if it's a darker color, it'll probably show up pretty good.
Billy Mitchum, no, I didn't heard it on a call. Just years of abuse finally caught me after almost 20 years of wearing body armor. My back gave out, couldn't take it anymore. Greg says, I've got some muscadine clear homemade brandy, 145 proof. I've had muscadine wine before. Oh, Casey, yeah, don't worry about that. I'll fight it till my last breath. I'm of I'm of Scotch Irish descent. We're too stupid to quit.
Don probably would show up okay. I mean, it's just something that we just have to try and see. I mean, that's how I figure out most of the stuff I do. Just try it and see if it works.
Wonder if you could just like practice on something that's already Cerakoted.
Yeah.
If I had anything Cerakoted, I'd let you try it.
Well, my AR is Cerakoted. I could probably try to do something on that.
Hang on. Isn't this Cerakoting?
I don't know. I don't know if that's anodized or Cerakoting.
Because if that's Cerakoting, you've already done it.
But see, look at the difference in how that turned out versus that one. How bright yours is and how light that one is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's got to do with the makeup of what they've coated it with or what it's made up of or what.
Hey, Richard. What's up, man? Got the boat fixed yet?
But,
I'm anxious to get back out in the field. We are coming up on the 2-hour mark.
Yep. Casey then brought out the woo.
Woo. The Ric Flair woo.
Limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a gun.
Whether you like it or don't like us, take a look at us because we're the best there is.
Wrestling was so much better back then than it is now.
I don't even watch it anymore. I quit watching a long time ago. I was going to say something and completely slipped my mind. Oh, we can't forget to mention the show in October.
Yes.
Spirit of the Woods.
Yeah.
Is it Spirit of the Woods or Spirit of the Forest?
Spirit of the Forest Festival.
Spirit of the Forest Festival.
Spirit of the Forest Bigfoot Festival. We'll get it eventually, I promise.
It's in Greenville, Ohio.
Yes, Greenville, Ohio.
Weekend of the 12th of October. Robbie and I will both be there. I'll have books and patches and maybe a few surprises on the table. Robbie's bringing some cool gear, and Robbie will be teaching a class on tracking, and I'll probably be helping with that. And I'm one of the guest speakers. I don't know the schedule of speaking yet, but I'm one of the guest speakers there, and I'll also have a table with books and stuff. So I hope you guys will come check it out. If you're anywhere near Greenville, Ohio, and on the weekend of the 12th of October, come see us. We'd love to see you guys.
Yep. Festival's the 11th and 12th. So come see us. I think she's got if you look on the website, You can sign up and do all the hands-on classes, and I want to say it's like $75 DA to get all the
I think so.
kind of like a VIP package.
Yeah.
You get a T-shirt and like a gift bag or something like that. So,
Robbie and I will be there the night before it starts, and hopefully Doc's going to be coming too. We don't know for sure yet, but we're also both heading out the next morning after the show is over. So because it's quite a bit of a drive, but if you're going to be in that area, don't be surprised if we don't take over a barbecue joint somewhere and sit and talk Bigfoot with a bunch of folks.
Yep.
Because they're not going to have us busy 24 hours a day, and if you're all anywhere in that area and would like to come and see us and hang out and talk Bigfoot and cryptids and grab something good to eat and get some pictures, and it'll be a good time.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good time, and like I said, everything will be on DA's table. If Doc comes, he's gonna bring some med kits. There'll be some hats and some whiskey flasks, some shot glasses, and all kinds of stuff like that from Lone Wolf Customs with all the DA Ex Machina on it. DA's gonna have books. Like I said, I'll be teaching a tracking class. So if you want to come learn some basic tracking skills, come see us. And Casey, I will agree with one of those, but not the other. I will never agree with the other.
Well, since we're rapidly approach the top of the hour, this is the point of the show where we talk about the 22 a day foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that's not even counting the number of first responders. In fact, if you look on my Facebook profile, you'll see a draped badge on my Facebook profile. We just lost an officer here in Missouri just this morning. And if you look at the odmp.com, that's Officer Down Memorial page, odmp.com, you'll see the toll that our first responders are taking. And we lose way too many of these men and women, and we owe them a debt of gratitude we can never repay. So check those sites out. Check out the Till Valhalla project, because they do so much good work for veterans. And make sure you're letting people that have worn a uniform. It doesn't matter what capacity, but if they've worn a uniform and they've put their butt on the line for us, we owe them a debt of gratitude, and we should check on them, let them know we care about them. So reach out to your friends and friends and family members who are veterans or first responders or anything along those lines, and let them know you care, because you never know when your text might be what keeps them off the edge that day. Let them know that they're not facing these demons alone, and not to let the hard days win, because we all have them. So reach out to them, check them out, let them know you're thinking about them. And we've been ending the show with a toast here lately, and it's something I'm pretty proud of, and something that I intend to keep going. And tonight I'm doing the toast a little differently. I have a Viking drinking horn, and I've got some actual homemade mead in it, blueberry mead. It smells potent as hell too. But we're gonna end the show with a toast, and I want to thank each and every one of y'all for being here with us tonight, and especially a big shout out to the mods. You guys are awesome. You guys do great work. We couldn't do this show without you guys, so thank you guys so much for everything you do. And we're gonna say a toast to the ones we've lost along the way. And the toast is from an old Irish drinking song called "The Parting Glass." If you haven't heard it before, go on YouTube, search "The Parting Glass," and give it a listen. You won't regret it. But the quote says, "But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all." Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DA Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.
that mead's got some punch to it. Oh my God. I just took a big swig of that and was like, felt like fire all the way down my
Fire!
like, damn. That stuff is a little more potent than I remembered.
Are we still live?
I think we are.